This podcast is a production of Widener Law Commonwealth in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. For more information, visit commonwealthlaw.widener.edu/podcast.
Welcome to Things I Wish I Knew, a new subseries in conjunction with the Widener Law Commonwealth Podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Nace. We have Dean of Admissions Matthew Kerns here to give us some tips and some tricks and some inside looks at what needs to be done in order to have a successful and complete law school application on today's Things I Wish I Knew. I'm Jonathan Nace, and as I said before, we have Dean of Admissions Matthew Kerns. How are you doing today, Dean?
Good. How are you?
Good. Now, you're the new dean. You just came to us this semester.
Yes.
After Dean Benfield went into retirement. How are you enjoying yourself so far?
It's been great so far. I've really enjoyed meeting the students, the faculty, the staff, the administration. They've all been very welcoming, and it's been great to start getting to know the law school.
Yeah. Now, you're from Edwardsville in Luzerne County, which is near Wilkes-Barre. That's like, what, an hour and a half drive from here?
Yeah, about an hour and a half drive.
So it's kind of like coming home.
Yeah, a little bit. That was sort of the intention when we came back to this area, was being closer to family.
What's your favorite part of Harrisburg?
So far, I think my favorite part is the scenery. I think being tucked right into the mountains, the river coming right through the city. It's just such a beautiful area. And I know, especially in the summertime and when the trees and everything turns green again, it's just a really beautiful area.
All right, so you earned your Bachelor's of Arts in History at Westminster College.
Yes.
Down west from near where I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
You got your JD at Florida Coastal School of Law in Jacksonville. Can you talk a little bit about your law school experience?
Sure. I had a wonderful law school experience. So after undergrad, I took about a year off before I went to law school. Then I went to school down in Florida. I think one of the things that really anyone going to law school needs to do is keep their mind open about possibilities. I had one area of law that I thought I was going to go into. When I went into law school, I came out and was doing something completely different, and that was because I kept my opportunities open and tried out different areas of law and really tried to engage with the community, which is important no matter where you go to law school.
Yeah. And how did you end up in admissions?
So for me, when I graduated law school, I graduated in 2.5 years, so it was a little weird because I was graduating in December. And so I was working in my admissions office as a student ambassador. And as I was studying for the bar, I was also applying to go into the Marine Corps JAG. And for the Marine Corps, you can only start the JAG program the way it's structured in the fall. So I had to take the February bar, and then I had to wait until October before I can go and do that. Well, as I was going through that process and working in my admissions office and working with the Marine Corps, it turned out that I had a bad back that I didn't know about, but they found through the medical exam. So it pushed me off for a year for when I could start. So during that time, my admissions office promoted me from student ambassador to seasonal admissions recruiter, so I could recruit that fall. And then it became clear that following year that the Marine Corps wasn't going to work. So my admissions office hired me on as an admissions counselor, and I went from there. I really didn't have any intention to get into admissions, to be honest with you. It's not something that little kids wake up and dream about, but it's been great for me. I love speaking to undergrad students and people that are interested in law school about helping them fulfill their dreams and the goals that they need to set to get there.
Yeah, and now about recruiting, though, how do you go about recruiting students? Do you go travel a lot? Do you visit different schools to give speeches? Is it more one-on-one? Do you set up meetings? What's the process there?
Yeah, it's a little bit of all of the above. So during the fall every year, most admissions professionals are out at law school fairs, graduate school fairs, Law School Admissions Council forums, and those are more kind of traditional tabling events where there's a whole bunch of us in a room, we set up tables, and then students come up and they ask questions and learn about the law schools. That's one type of recruiting. Another one is going on campus, and that's usually working with like a pre-law advisor or a teacher at a college, and sometimes you're talking to students as a group in a at a pre-law meeting, or you're talking to a class and giving a presentation, that's a little bit more intimate. I do a lot of online stuff as well, and so I'll host webinars about the admissions process, or we'll do online open houses, all those sort of different things. So there's a lot of different ways that you can recruit. What it's really about is making sure that you're making a connection with the individual student and getting their questions answered. And there's, with technology, so many different ways that you can do that these days.
Yeah. Now, I looked through your bio on the Law School Commonwealth website, and it's a very impressive resume that you're bringing to Harrisburg. So when you were Assistant Dean of Admissions at Arkansas Little Rock's William H. Bowen School of Law, you increased applications over 120%, raised the entering class credentials to their highest in over a decade, and you started a couple of new programs that we'll talk about later. So just how do you do that? Is there like a step-by-step process, or was it just, right place, right time, right people?
Yeah, I think there's it's a little bit of everything. So I think Bowen and Widener Law Commonwealth are very similarly situated. So they're both the only law school in a capital city. They both, have strong ties to the state. What I found in Arkansas was that there was a foundation across the state of sort of the basic infrastructure that you would need to get people to law school or provide the education that they need. But there wasn't anything built on top of that. And so what I really started to do was we had a lot of first-generation college students, folks that really didn't know about the admissions process. And so my focus was creating programming that's sort of value added. So it wasn't specifically about the law school, but it was about the admissions process, and it was about getting people informed about what they were getting themselves into if they were considering law school. So we did things like webinars, we did pre-law resource guides, we changed how we did on-campus events. So instead of just doing your traditional prospective student open house, which is largely selling the law school, we would do things like an inside an admissions committee workshop where we would bring folks on and I would give them mock applications and they can review them, and we have a discussion about what makes an application strong or weak. And that provides, I think it empowers people a little bit more to engage in the process and understand it. So when they are ready to apply to law school, they have a little bit more insight.
Yeah. So now it also says that you founded the Arkansas Pre-Law Advisor Listserv, the Arkansas Pre-Law Advisor Meeting, and the Arkansas Spring Recruitment Swing. So I would like you to kind of explain what those are and if you have any plans to bring similar programs to Widener.
Yeah, so what I found in Arkansas was, again, there was that basic foundation there, but there wasn't anything built on top of it. And this is especially true in pre-law advising. And I think it's true in Pennsylvania as well, where a lot of schools don't have a person who is designated the pre-law advisor, and that's their only responsibility. Typically, especially at smaller schools, it'll be a faculty member or maybe a staff member that has their main responsibilities, and then pre-law advising is layered on top of it. And usually there's a lot of responsibilities, and they don't have the time to dedicate to pre-law advising like a lot of larger universities have. And so the first step was getting these folks connected together to start a conversation, because I was going out and meeting all these folks and seeing that they were all in similar situations, but they weren't talking to each other. And so what we did was we created a listserv where we can get all these folks that have these very varied responsibilities, but all sort of intersected with pre-law advising in some way, on a listserv together so we can share information. So a lot of them weren't like tied into the Law School Admissions Council and the information provided to pre-law advisors through there, so we were getting them signed up for that. We were pushing out information about LSAT test dates, about study guides and all that sort of news that they just weren't tied into yet. So it was about connecting them together and starting that conversation. Once we got the listserv started, the next step was bringing everyone into the same room. And so I partnered up with a local college who had a pre-law advisor who I'd been working with, and we decided to host a pre-law meeting. We called it the Arkansas Pre-Law Advisor Meeting. Because sort of like politics, everything's local, right?
Yeah.
Pre-law advising is pretty much is very similar. So we knew that these folks weren't going to go out and join the Southwest Association of Pre-Law Advisors, which is a larger geographic area of pre-law advisors. They weren't going to go to those meetings, but they might come to something that was a little bit more local, 2 hours down the road. So we brought everyone to the same room. We talked about, for the first meeting, there were 2 law schools in Arkansas, so we brought the deans of both law schools into the room to talk about and introduce their law schools. We brought in Arkansas Access to Justice to talk about access to justice issues in the state. Then we brought in the Law School Admissions Council to talk about pre-law advising and the resources that they provide for the LSAT and everything like that. And then finally, the final thing was the Arkansas Spring Recruitment Swing. And that was another sort of collaborative thing that we did. And that was, I partnered with law schools from around the area. So it would be the law schools in Arkansas and then the law schools in surrounding states. And what we did is we drove to different undergraduate schools and we did panels over the course of a week. So last year, I think we went to, it was either 10 or 11 undergraduate schools in 5 days. And there are only 22 undergraduate schools in Arkansas, so we hit up about half of them, and we drove over 1,300 miles, so around the state. Jeez. And so it was a bit of a drive. It was a bit of a week. By the end, we had one of us had rented a van, so we all started carpooling rather than driving our own cars.
Yeah, it sounds like a haul.
It was a haul. It would have been shorter to drive from Little Rock to D.C. than it would be driving around the state like we did. But it was great. I mean, we saw a lot of students that had never met a lawyer before, had never met an admissions dean, had never thought about law school, but were interested. And so we went to some really small schools. And brought that information to them. And I think that would be a great thing to do here in Pennsylvania. There's so many small schools that I think are often overlooked, that are just producing really great, strong students. But because the schools are small and they don't have the resources, those students aren't getting all the advantages that they can.
Yeah, and it's more of it's not the fact that people don't know that law schools exist. It's that they just don't know, one, if that's something that they want to do, and two, if it's something that they can do.
Right, exactly. And then even if they have those two things, they know those two things, they don't know the differences between the law school and the programs. And so we talked about that. So it's a great opportunity, and it's very collaborative too. I think for the most part, law school admissions professionals are very collaborative. We work together. We all sort of know each other. We travel together. And so it's always nice when you can get a group together and really collaborate in a way that it makes a difference. Because some of the schools we were going to, over 50% of their student population were first-generation college students. So, we were really providing some value-added information to them.
Now, your bio also says that you are serving currently on the executive board for the Southwestern Association of Pre-Law Advisors and several other council committees and work groups. So, to me, that makes you kind of the perfect person to give tips on how to make a good law school application. So let's dive right into that.
Sounds great.
All right. So what tests must a potential student take, and what scores are you looking for? I mean, I had to do the LSAT, but there's a lot of schools around the country that are now taking the GRE because it opens up the doors to people in more technical fields like science, engineering, math, and these places that, especially like bureaucracies or big firms that do businesses with oil companies or whatever, need these people who know what they're doing math-wise in order to get them in. So are we going to be taking the GRE are you going to be accepting the GRE in Harrisburg, or is it just going to be the LSAT?
Yeah, for right now, we're just accepting the LSAT here. And so I have not had any conversations with the faculty or the admissions committee about changing that at this point, but I'm also only 4 weeks into the job. So, one thing to consider about the GRE that I don't think a lot of people realize is that if you take the LSAT and the GRE, law schools still have to report the LSAT. Yeah. It's not like you get to choose what you get to report. So if you take the LSAT, we're still going to receive that score. And generally for folks who, take the GRE, it's much smaller than you would expect. I think it's still 98% of people who matriculate to law school have an LSAT score. So it's a very small portion of the population that are only taking the GRE. And they're for exactly what you said, those very technical programs, patent law and those sort of things that people are going to with those or health law if you get doctors coming in or nurses, and those are definitely fields that are really important. But at this point, I can't commit to that, just because I've only been here for a few weeks.
Yeah, no, but and we do have a lot of, I wouldn't call them specialties, but we have a lot of programs here, like our certificate programs.
Oh yeah,
that kind of do make a person, I don't want to say an expert, but they definitely specialize into these fields, like environmental law with Professor Dernbach. We've got constitutional law, politics, that sort of thing. Yeah. So even if you don't come in knowing what you want to specialize in, and you don't have to specialize at all, but you can sort of find your way as you go, I feel.
Right. I always explain, and this is the way I think about law school and specializations. When you get to law school, the JD is your major, right? I think a lot of folks come in, they're like, what am I majoring in law school? Well, you're majoring in law school. You're majoring in the JD. If you're specializing, it's more like a minor. If you're thinking about it in the undergrad context. And so, not everyone needs to specialize, but if you know what area you want to go into or you find that passion your first or second year, specializations are a great add-on to your degree, absolutely.
Yeah. Now, do you have a certain LSAT score that you're looking for, kind of like a barrier to break through?
Yeah, so we don't have any cutoff scores. We review applications holistically, so we're looking at everything. Generally, my advice on the LSAT is, when you're applying to law schools and you're looking at your law schools, look at their median LSAT score. If your LSAT score is above their median, ours is a 149, you're usually in a pretty good position. If your LSAT score is below the median, it's really not helping you. That doesn't mean it's going to exclude you because half the class has an LSAT score below that. But it's not strengthening your application at all. And so most law schools take the highest LSAT when they're reviewing applications. And so it never hurts to retake the LSAT if your score is lower.
No, and I know that personally because I brought mine up by about 10 points.
Yeah, and that's great. Not many people do that. There are definitely diminishing returns on retaking the LSAT if you don't change your study habits. I think generally the second time you take the LSAT, it's something like the average is 3 points higher, but if you take it 3 times, it's only like 1.5 points higher. And so unless you make major changes to your study habits, which I'm assuming you probably did.
Yeah. So it was, so when I was studying the first time, it was the summer going from my junior year of undergrad into my senior year, and it was summer, so I had other stuff to do. I was home. I wasn't as focused. But then, studying for my second one, and especially after just getting kicked in the throat by the first one, buckled down, and I made a schedule for myself. So an hour on this class that I need to do, an hour on this class, an hour for mock trial, an hour for LSAT studying, and I think that sort of time management skill is something that's really going to help me and a lot of other people who have that skill on the bar. Right. Because I'm taking the bar next year, which I can't even believe.
It's coming up fast.
It comes so fast. That is one thing about law school is you're so busy all the time that you don't notice the passage of time.
Yeah, it does. It goes by. You're already a year and a half in. You're halfway done. So you're on the back side of things now.
Yeah.
Pretty soon you're going to be taking those bar prep classes and getting out of here.
Now, speaking of the holistic review, going back to that a little bit, what sort of qualities are you looking for in a student?
Sure. So on any application, whether it's a law school application or a job application, the theory behind it is that past performance is an indicator of future performance. And so, in law school, we want students that are going to be actively involved in the community. They're going to be actively involved in class, asking questions, leading discussions. They're going to be involved in student organizations. They're going to be volunteering in their community. They're going to be networking out in the legal community. And so you want to highlight those things in your application. Because if you're doing them in undergrad or your life before law school, it's likely to continue while you're in law school as well. So, if you're coming straight from undergrad and you're involved in student organizations, those are great things to highlight, especially if you're taking on leadership positions. We're not really looking for a quantity of student organizations. Like if you're a member of 10 student organizations, but you're only showing up to the meetings, you're just a member, it's not really saying much. It just means that you can show up and be present. We're looking for folks who are actively involved, taking on leadership roles.
Yeah, no, you bring that up, and I think I was a member of like 15 organizations, and I only showed up to like 5.
Right.
Yeah.
It's very common. I did the same thing when I was an undergrad. But you definitely want to dive into one or two that you're really passionate about and take on some leadership positions, because that's going to show that you're really committed to something and interested in it. And that's what we want to know about in your application. What are you passionate about? What is driving you to law school? Because law school and the legal profession is incredibly difficult. When you get out into the profession, you're going to be helping folks with some of the most perplexing problems that they're ever encountering in their life. They're coming to you truly with their most difficult issues, and it's your responsibility to solve them. And so, it's important to have that in mind as you go through the process.
Yeah. Now, one thing that I don't think anyone in my class was fully understood when we made our applications and when we got here, and I think because it's something that just gets kind of overlooked, but it's very important, it's the character and fitness requirements. So can you just kind of explain what those are and what students have to disclose if they have to disclose anything?
Yeah, character and fitness requirements. The questions are going to change depending on the school that you're applying to, but generally, most schools base them on the state bar exam character and fitness questions. So when you graduate law school, you're going to take a bar exam somewhere. They're going to have character and fitness questions that they're going to ask you. So most schools model their questions on the jurisdiction that they're in. And generally, those are questions like, have you ever been academically disciplined or reprimanded in college? Did you get in any trouble in college, for academic or otherwise? Have you ever been arrested or had any criminal charges against you? They could be financial questions. Have you ever had to declare bankruptcy, or have you ever, absconded with money or anything like that? And finally, usually there's a professional sanction question about, have you been a member of a profession and been sanctioned as a member of that profession? Generally, what they're looking for is open and honesty. To be honest, most disclosures, I would say 90 to 95% of disclosures aren't that big of a deal. I know there's probably folks that are listening out there and they're like, but I got an underage like in college.
Yeah.
That's probably the most common. Obviously you don't want anything on your record, but one underage is not going to derail your application to law school or your application to the bar exam. What will, though, is if the behavior is habitual and it's unresolved. Yeah. So if you have multiple underages or multiple DUIs over a long period of time and those issues are not resolved, then again, the theory of past performance is an indicator of future performance. Those issues are probably going to continue to happen.
Yeah, and those professional organization ones don't even apply to most students because you've never been a professional. Like that's like them just wanting to see, were you were you a doctor or a nurse and you were disciplined by the American Medical Association, something like that.
Right, exactly.
Which, I mean, there are students who come from other backgrounds who have had jobs before, but they don't, that doesn't apply to your exiting college senior.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Most of those professional ones are not. They're going to be your more non-traditional students that those are going to apply to, and are very rare, to be honest. I've maybe only seen a handful over the last decade.
Yeah.
But generally, what we're looking for in those disclosures is we're looking for you to address the problem. So tell us what happened, tell us how it was resolved, and then third is what did you learn from that situation? How have you grown from there? So there's really three things. Address the issue, how is it resolved, and what did you learn? How did you grow from that?
And there's really no reason to sort of hide it because, and you don't get this talk before you apply.
Right.
But you do get it when you're here. We had a representative from Lawyers Concerned for Lawyers come, and she's come and spoke to. I've heard her speak 3 times. Same story,
Good.
but one time it was for orientation, one time it was for professional responsibility class, and one time was for I think orientation again, because there were a bunch of people who missed her speech the first time, and she got into some serious legal trouble as a professional, and spent some time in prison, and now she's practicing again.
Right.
So it's like you can make mistakes, but our profession is very forgiving. Was her message.
Right. The big thing I think most bar examiners are looking for is that open honesty. Yeah. If you're hiding things, if they feel like you're hiding things, that's when you get into trouble. And I see that's the most, when folks are coming in, leaving their 3L year, they're applying for the bar exam, then they come back to me and they're like, what did I disclose on my application? Because your application, law school application, your application to the bar should match. For those incidences that happened before law school. If they don't match, if there's stuff that you didn't disclose, the bar examiners are going to find out about it, and then they're going to come back to you and say, why didn't you disclose that on your law school application? Were you not being honest? And then, if the bar examiners, make it an issue, then they might kick it back to the law school and say, if you knew this, would you have accepted this person? And then that has to actually kick back to the admissions committee again, and then we have to re-examine that admission. Would we have admitted this person? And I've never had to do it, but I know other admissions professionals that have had to do it, and that's revoke someone's admission after they graduated law school. So they've gone through 3 years of law school, they've graduated, and now that admission from 3.5 years ago is being revoked, and that is being wiped clean, and it's because they weren't honest and forthright up front. Now that's not for every issue; those are pretty extreme.
Yeah.
That
would be like a reckless murder charge or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. It's something like that. A lot of the times it's financial as well, because bar examiners are very concerned about the financial history and the honesty of lawyers, because you are holding a lot of money for clients in your IOLD accounts.
Yeah, I mean, it's a complicated scenario that, you can kind of have a lot of anxiety about if you're not well informed.
Right.
And that was definitely my experience and a lot of my friends' experience, because we're just like, oh, wow, well, I don't know, I got detention in 12th grade. Does that apply? And it's like, no, they don't care about that.
Yeah. No, I don't really care about your detention in high school. But if you're running away with other people's money, we definitely need to know that. Like I said, like 95% of this stuff that I see is not that big of a deal. It's really only a big deal if it's habitual, unresolved behavior.
Yeah, and I feel like more often than not, people in general are good.
Yes.
So we don't have those issues because people are just, good.
Yeah, most people that are coming to law school are coming because they want to be public servants. They want to make a difference in their community. And so they have those very altruistic values. And so Those are great things to have.
Yeah, it's a good heart will always lead you in the right direction, I think. So now let's also talk about kind of how you can know if someone has a good heart with a letter of recommendation.
Sure.
Do you need letters of recommendation for admission? What should be included in those? Who should you get to write them? I know, and then I'll follow up with another question after that.
Sure. So for letters of recommendation, my recommendation, let's start with, are they required? Depends on the law school. So I'd ask the admissions professionals at the law school that you're applying to. Here at Widener, we do require 2 letters of recommendation. They should be professional letters of recommendation rather than personal letters of recommendation. And what I mean by professional, I mean that should be someone that you've worked closely with, that knows your work ethic and can speak directly about your ability to succeed in law school. Generally, those are folks like professors that you might have worked with in undergrad. Maybe they're a mentor. You've worked on projects with them. Or maybe it's a supervisor, a work supervisor, or a work colleague, that you work closely with, or a client that you work closely with, someone who you have a professional relationship. And that's opposed to a personal relationship. I see letters of recommendation all the time that are from folks of, let's just say, of note. Someone who might have a big name, and they might think that that's going to help them get into law school. But I'll tell you what, I can see through those letters of recommendation so quickly, because all they say is, little Johnny, I've known him and his family for 10 years, or, he worked on my campaign, such a nice guy, I think he'll do great in law school. Well, all that's telling me is that you're a nice person. That's great, but that is the baseline assumption of any letter of recommendation. What we want to know is more detail. We want to know, what projects did you work on? Did you take initiative? Did you see the project through completion? Did you take it to a level that was unexpected? Do you have a great attention to detail? Those type of things that are a little bit more personal or professional, if we want to keep using that term, and speak a little bit more about your ability to succeed in law school.
Yeah, and I know that you're not supposed to have family give you a letter of recommendation. I was actually talking to Steph, who's she runs all the technical aspects of the podcast, and she was telling me this story about this person who had their mom send in a letter of recommendation, and that just doesn't fly.
Yeah, I've seen family members of parents write letters of recommendation before. Generally, that's probably too personal. Maybe the only context I could see it in is maybe if the only job that you had was, working for a family business. But even then, is there a client that you've worked closely with? Is there a coworker that is maybe, not in your house all the time and raised you that can speak about that? Because they're going to be a little bit more objective. And really be able to assess you a little bit more.
Yeah, see, I kind of had that situation myself before college and even into college. Because my 2 letters of recommendation were from professors. But, before that, I worked for my family business, and we had one employee who I didn't work a lot with, and I mostly just did deliveries of like copy paper or copiers, or I did some minor repairs in the office, because we had a office machine company that my family used to run that we just sold off about a year ago. And so like the only 2 people who really could have written about my work there was my dad and my grandpa.
Right. Yeah, I think you made the right call with going with professors. They're just a little bit more objective than family members, and I think there's credibility to that objectivity.
Yeah, and I think it's not just that your family loves you, because that's definitely one conflict of interest. Yeah. But it's also like your parents. My parents took out Parent Plus loans.
Right.
So like they have sort of a monetary interest
Right,
in making
right.
sure that I succeed
Right.
as well.
Now, what would be really interesting is if you got a parent to write you a letter of recommendation and then it was a bad letter of recommendation.
Oh, could you imagine?
I would love to see that one. That would be great.
That would be some Thanksgiving.
Yeah, it would.
Oh, jeez. I actually, I had two teachers in high school who one taught the other as a high school student, because one was there for like 40 years, one was there for like 20. And the one told us, he wrote me one bad letter for the one college and one good letter for the other college, so guess which one I got into.
That's funny.
Yeah, so I mean they became friends and they laugh about it now, but it's that is sort of the situation that you kind of fall into there.
Right.
So, do you do admissions interviews?
Here at Widener, we do not.
Okay.
Yeah, some schools do admissions interviews. We don't. They're not part of the application process. But if you have questions about the admissions process, if you want to come in and visit the law school, that's more than welcome. But we're not going to interview for you for admissions purposes.
Okay. Now, speaking of visits to campus, I know yesterday I had 4 potential students in my criminal law class, which was fun. It's like they're all bright-eyed and full of hope, and they haven't
hasn't been crushed yet.
Oh no, it hasn't been crushed yet. Not that Widener goes out of its way to crush, but I think law school in general is just such a daunting situation that it will crush you if you're not careful. But,
right. Well, that's why we need people. You need to know what you're passionate about when you come to law school, because you need to keep that motivation alive.
But I think part of what's sort of helpful at this campus is how nice it is. We're in a beautiful part of the country. It's trees all over the place. I mean, yesterday I was in the library studying, and there were 4 deer looking at me through the window because
great.
We've got a wildlife preserve down the street a little bit. We have this big pond that no one's allowed to go into, and there's this like 400-pound snapping turtle that's in there, and it walks across the parking lot every once in a while.
Oh, cool.
It's a wild situation out here. but it's beautiful. We're on the land of this estate of this millionaire, Mr. Vartan, who donated the property to us, to the school in the 80s to build the buildings. And actually, I think our admissions building is in his old house.
Yes.
And so it's this sort of picturesque, sort of calming area. And I think that definitely one of the reasons why I chose to come here was because of my visit to campus. Good. When I came in and I saw, this is really similar to my undergrad at St. Vincent. It's small. Mm-hmm. Everyone knows each other. You can, people hold the door open for you.
Yep.
And so first of all, how would a student go about scheduling a visit here, and what should they look for while they're visiting?
Yeah, so if a student wants to schedule a visit, all they have to do is contact the admissions office. We have a form online that they can fill out if they don't want to give us a call or shoot us an email to set up a visit. But, you're more than welcome to send us an email or give us a call. We can set that up. Right now, as you mentioned in your class, we're running an event. It's 2 weeks long. We called it the Great Law School Sit-In, where faculty have generously opened up their classes for prospective students to come in and sit in and observe. And so we're in the middle of that right now. And so that's a great opportunity. We schedule those out in advance. Students can go on our website. They can select which classes that they want to sit in, and then they can come in and basically they check in at the security desk. They pick up a bag with information, and they go right to class, and then they leave. So it's more of a little bit of an informal event, but it's a great opportunity for students to kind of get the feel of what it's like to be on a law school campus and sit in on a live class. We have different events throughout the year. If students want to visit campus, we have prospective student open houses. For accepted students, we have an accepted students day. We're going to be doing more of those value-added events like I spoke about earlier, like the Inside an Admissions Committee workshop in the upcoming year. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities to come to campus. I think, when students come to campus, what they should be asking or looking for, generally is this a place where you can spend 3 years and thrive? And so, like you mentioned here, this is a beautiful campus, one of the nicest I think that I've ever seen. It's just a huge amount of space. It's very calm and peaceful. There's a butterfly garden here, which is pretty cool. So it's got a nice work-life balance, but also the students and the faculty are just so engaged, and that's something, if you're sitting in on a class, that you want to look for. Are the faculty just lecturing the entire time, or is there more mentorship going on? Is there more of a conversation? Do students genuinely seem to like it here? Those are things that you want to look for.
Yeah, and I mean, it's, just to get back to Harrisburg, it's very inviting because it's a small town pretending to be a city.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I think of it as a small, medium-sized city, but it is. It does definitely has that sort of town feel to it a little bit, because you can very quickly dive into the community and get to know folks. One of the things that I think is great about living in a capital city like Harrisburg is that there's always something going on. I mean, it's the seat of government. Mm-hmm. All the large law firms are going to have an office here. All the large businesses are going to have offices here. There's lobbying firms. There's all sorts of things happening. In the city all year around, which makes it a very dynamic place to be. And I think one of the advantages to the students to here is that they have access to those opportunities all year round. Yeah. If you're 2 hours away, you can't drive up here for an internship in state government, every day. Maybe you can do that during the summer and do an internship, but if law firms or government organizations are looking for people during the fall and spring semester, they're going to be looking here at Widener Law Commonwealth, because our students are the ones that are, within 10 minutes of the Capitol building and can get there every day and work in those opportunities. I was just reviewing some of our employment statistics yesterday, and I was just so impressed to see that for the 2018 graduating class, over 20% of the graduates were in a state or federal clerkship. I mean, that's such a high percentage.
Stellar.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and I think it's because the students are here, where the court system is located, and have those opportunities to really build up a great resume.
Yeah, and I think it's also because alumni stay here.
Right.
And so that network is built in. And not only the alumni being here, but also, we have Judge Martin Carlson, who's a federal judge. He's an adjunct here.
Right.
So, he took on 3 clerks last summer who were all Widener first years. And, he told his friends. And his friends, who are also federal magisterial district judges, took on Widener clerks. Yep. And so on down the line. And I think that itself is so unique to have your alumni so close together.
Right.
And we actually have an alumni coming back today, which, this podcast is going to come out a couple weeks from now. But we have Don McGann, who was former White House counsel, who's an alumni from Widener Commonwealth. He's coming to give a speech today. And, everyone's going because it's just, I'm not going to miss that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it'll be a great dynamic talk, I think, and those opportunities, you just don't get them everywhere. I was also reading another statistic, and it's on the website right now, is that 10% of Pennsylvania's county prosecutors, top prosecutors, the folks that are leading those offices, are Widener Law Commonwealth alum, and I think that's really due to the fact that students, while they're here, are just so engaged in the legal community, building those resumes, getting that experience from the faculty and the alumni and the legal community that you just don't see that very many places.
Yeah, and I think it's also the fact that we're small. You kind of get that opportunity to become a leader. I had a crazy idea just to start this podcast. I went to Dean Teplitz and said, do you mind if I do this? And then here we are, 8-9 episodes into it already.
Right. And you wouldn't get that opportunity at a larger place.
Yeah, because either someone else would have already started it, or there would be 5 other people competing with you for it.
Right.
And it's not, it's just... here's just like sort of a land of opportunity.
That's right.
And we are so glad that you moved into this land of opportunity with us, and we're excited to have you help steer the ship for us. And I'm looking forward to working with you again on a couple of other projects maybe. And
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for joining us today, Dean.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. This has been fantastic.
Widener University Commonwealth Law School is the Pennsylvania capital's only law school, with 3 specialized centers of legal scholarship through its Law and Government Institute, Environmental Law and Sustainability Center, and Business Advising Program. Widener Law Commonwealth offers an exceptional learning experience that is personal, practical, and professional. Visit commonwealthlaw.widener.edu for more information.